Hello friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Economic Sutra. In this episode, we are going to explore the area of housing for all. As you all know, housing for all is an important focus area for this government, and there is a major scheme called the PM's Awas Yojana, the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, that looks into this particular area. There is an urban component to it, and there is a rural component to it. Now, there are several verticals under this. I'm going to read out the ones which are in the urban space. There is the in situ slum redevelopment, the ISSR scheme. There is the credit linked subsidy scheme, the CLSS. There is the affordable housing in partnership, AHP, and the beneficiary led construction, BLC. So there are four verticals under this, and they have been very, very successful. Now, of course, this is not the first time that the government of India has gone in for a housing for all effort. There have been other schemes in the past, like, for example, the Indira Awas Yojana and so on. But what really marks this effort out in recent years is first the sheer ambition of it, but also the intellectual framework that was used to build out this effort. So just to give you some sense of the scale, for example, when we are talking about the urban part of the PMAY, in the last 6 years, as many as 1.14 crore, I repeat, 1.14 crore houses have been sanctioned, of which 52 lakhs have already been built. So this is not a trivial scale that we are talking about. But in addition to this, what you have here is also a very different approach that has been taken in order to be able to build this out. So to give you some sense of this, in the past when there were such schemes, under JNURM and many other efforts, the fundamental philosophy was that the government or some government agency would decide where these housing schemes would be rolled out. The idea was, in keeping with the top-down economic planning approach, that the economic planner knew where these people wanted to live, and that they would then be able to build out these houses, and then consequently, people would, particularly the poor, would then go and live in those places. The old approach, which was a much more top-down driven approach, was derived from the thinking that the economic planner knew where people, and particularly the poor, wanted to live. And so essentially, there was a top-down decision of where this housing would be built, and consequently, certain housing schemes were built out and people lived there. Now, of course, in the socialist era of shortages, people had no choice. I mean, if you built out something, there was a shortage, people went and lived in that. But in the last 25 years, as we have opened out the economy and more choice has popped up, it was quickly realized that in many of the places where these schemes were built out, and very often housing for the poor was built far out in the edges of the city, what was discovered was that the poor didn't want to live there. After all, when you have migrants moving, for example, into the city, they are not moving in because they don't have houses. They have houses back in the villages. The reason they move to the city is that they want to be close to where their jobs are. Now, if you build houses for them far out in the suburbs, then it, misses the point. And what was discovered that there were many cases where the government or the government agency would build out housing, but people would refuse to move there. In fact, there have been occasions where these houses built, they were given out, and those who received those houses actually returned those houses. So we had a rather awkward situation that even in a city as crowded and as sought after like Delhi, there were housing schemes that were actually effectively abandoned. So there is an issue here with a top-down approach. So in the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, what was done is a much more decentralized approach, a much more demand-driven approach, where essentially the government became an enabler to allow people to live where they wanted to live. So you have a bunch of schemes that I just read out, but of these schemes, the one that is being particularly popular is called the beneficiary-led construction scheme. And the essential idea here is that the beneficiary either wants to build a house or extend an existing house or upgrade it, and is provided with a certain amount of support from the government in order to do this, depending on where they have access to either land or want to live, and so on and so forth. So this is a very important part of the thinking of the PM's Awas Yojana. Now let me add that there is a wider context to all of this. This is one, the idea of course of decentralization, of allowing people to build houses where they want to live, and of course in many cases this has also been able to reach out to the smaller towns, which is another issue that was there with the earlier system, where it was not able to penetrate into our smaller towns. So you will see there are many cities, particularly in the northeast, places like Agartala for example, have been completely rebuilt in parts because of this PMAY. In addition, there has been a recognition, and this is not entirely just a part of the PMAY, but the wider urban policy, that we are a country that is on the move. We are on the move geographically, people migrate all the time, and socially, people are moving up the social ladder. So in that context also, we need to remember that you have to have some capability of delivering rental housing. So not a part of the PMAY, but certainly an important part of the wider urban landscape and housing policy of the government. And with that, let us go and have a look at some of the houses that were built under PMAY in recent years.
देखिए जी, हमारा जीवन यापन पूजा पाठ का है। हम ब्राह्मण हैं, भारद्वाज ब्राह्मण वंश से हैं हम, और हमारा पूजा पाठ करते थे, और पूजा पाठ में हमारे जो दक्षिणा मिलता था उससे हम घर का गुजारा करते थे। रहने का हमारा किराए का मकान वगैरह था, और बहुत ही मुश्किल से हम हमारा जीवन यापन करते थे। उसके बाद किसी तरह से ये जो जिसमें आवास योजना का ज़मीन है वो हुआ।
यहाँ पे बंगाली कम्युनिटीज़ के लोग जो हैं वो ज़्यादा रहते हैं। जो प्रवासी लोग हैं 20 या 25 साल पहले बंगाल से पूजा पाठ करने के लिए मथुरा में, वो लोग राधा रानी के भक्त हैं सारे लोग, तो उनके लिए हमने थोड़ा अलग सोचा कि ये लोग पूजा पाठी वाले लोग हैं तो इनके घरों में अच्छे से पेंटिंग वगैरह करवाई जाए। तो जिन बैंक्स में हमारे योजना के अकाउंट्स हैं उनसे भी हमने कांटेक्ट किया, और वो हमें पैसा भी दे रहे हैं उसके लिए, और इनके घर वगैरह हम अलग से पेंट करवा रहे हैं।
आधी एक ही दिन में पूरे भरना है।
आधी मतलब परसों शाम को आधी भरेंगे,
कल ही लग जाएगी सर।
चौखट मतलब कल घुटाई का काम और चौखट का काम दोनों एक साथ चलेगा। ये हमारे लिए बिल्कुल असंभव सी बात थी कि हम लोन लेकर के ये कार्य हम करते। क्यों असंभव इसलिए थी क्योंकि उतनी यहाँ पर मतलब फैसिलिटी नहीं है जिससे कि हम लोन को चुकता कर पाएँ। तो ये तो बिल्कुल ही पॉसिबल नहीं होती कि हम लोन लेकर ये आवास योजना को चालू कर पाते, और यदि करते भी तो उसके लिए हमें बहुत ही परेशानी होना पड़ता। एक तो लोन नहीं मिलता, पहली बात तो ये है कि लोन ही नहीं मिलता। दूसरी बात ये लोन में भी यदि हम करते तो उसमें भी बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट हो जाते। जो लोन मिलने की जो प्रक्रिया है उस प्रक्रिया में बहुत सारा समय लगता, तो वो सारे समय का बेनिफिट मिल गया हमें। और जो बीच का जो बिचौली होते हैं उनसे भी हमें लाभ मिला है, हमें किसी को जैक जुगाड़ नहीं करना पड़ा, ये भी हमें लाभ मिला है।
जैसे ही लाभार्थी की पात्रता का चयन हो जाता है तो उसके बाद हम उनकी जियोटैग करवाते हैं। नॉट स्टार्टेड लेवल की जियोटैग होती है जिसमें लोकेशन को कैप्चर किया जाता है कि लाभार्थी यहाँ पे मकान निर्माण करेगा, और उनको 50,000 रुपये एडवांस में दे दिए जाते हैं कि आप अपने आवास का निर्माण कार्य शुरू करवाएं। जैसे वो निर्माण कार्य शुरू करवाते हैं और डीपीसी लेवल तक निर्माण कार्य हो जाता है, प्लिंथ लेवल तक, तो उनको दूसरी किस्त से हम 1.5 लाख रुपये की दे देते हैं जियोटैग करा के। पूरे आवास बनने तक 5 लेवल की जियोटैग होती है, नोट स्टार्टेड, फाउंडेशन, लिंटल, रूफ और कंप्लीट, देन कंप्लीट। कंप्लीट में बाहर लोगो लगता है प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना का, और फिर उनको 50,000 रुपये दिया जाता है।
So viewers, to speak about the PMAY and its future, we have none other than the Honorable Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs, Hardeep Puri ji. Welcome to the show, sir. So let me begin by asking you the most obvious. This Housing for All is obviously a major project of this government. Now, this is not the first time that a government has had a Housing for All effort. So what is so different about this particular effort from PMAY?
First of all, let me thank you for having me on your show. You are absolutely right. This is not the first government which has conceived a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or Housing for All. This is very different from earlier schemes. And I think that stark difference can be seen in terms of a comparison with a previous scheme, which was launched, I think, in 2004, which ran till 2014, in which a total number of houses which were grounded, homes grounded, was 8.58 lakhs. Total number of houses approved was only 13 lakhs. So 13 lakhs in 10 years, and you have the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which started in 2015, which is 114 lakhs. So 13 lakhs in 10 years and 114 lakhs. 1 crore, 14 lakhs in as little as 6 years. Difference is that the previous scheme, I think, was not grounded in reality. One of my distinguished predecessors, I don't want to name him, sat in this building, Nirman Bhavan, and drew up a grand scheme, okay? And they were monitoring it from here, micromanaging it from here. And I think the facts speak for themselves. If after 10 years, you can only approve 13 lakh units, then the scheme has barely got off the ground. Even these 13 lakhs, I must tell you, some of these numbers actually got done after we continued that scheme for 3 years of our, period. I think the JNURM continued till about March 2017 or thereabouts. Even then, the total number of houses grounded is only 8 this thing, and approved is 13 lakhs. There was a gap. The second, I think, important difference is this scheme is being implemented through 4 verticals. Those 4 verticals are very interesting. One of them is in situ slum rehabilitation. You know, typically people come to the large cities looking for work, and typically they choose to live in informal settlements. I prefer the use of the term informal settlements rather than a slum. And what you call jhuggi jhopdi, what you call something else, these are informal settlements which come up in the heart of the city. Now, our experience, particularly the experience of a previous Congress government, showed that when you try to relocate people who have lived in a particular place and you try to take them 100 kilometers away or 200 kilometers away, ostensibly to rationalize urban space, a scheme like that is doomed to fail right from the point of inception. Why do I say this? Because the most important thing for those who are living in informal settlement is proximity to their livelihood, to work. So one of the lessons we learned was that we would do an in situ slum rehabilitation. That is, you allow the cluster of people where they are, try and capture the value of the land, and try through a system of cross subsidization, where the government doesn't spend anything, you get a promoter or a builder in, you create decent, clean, environmentally friendly units with a toilet, a kitchen for those who had that original space, and you finance that through capture of the land value through commercial space, etc., which is built. It's working. In the heart of Bengaluru, for instance, there is a building which used to, I think, now which houses all the central government offices, including CPWD, etc. I went for the inauguration. In Delhi, we have 2 projects. One of them is nearing completion, I think east of Kailash, if I am not mistaken. Another, Katputli colony, is taking a little longer because there were difficulties in releasing it. Hopefully that soon. The second is CLSS. This is a system of interest subvention. Typically, young people got new jobs, they get married, they want a home of their own, they go to a bank, ask for a loan, the bank typically asks them to pay 12% or thereabout. Through this system of interest subvention, we give them 3% upfront. It helps. Now, the interest subvention scheme, from what I can make out, is already got 17.35 lakh people have got it. As against in the earlier 10-year period, it was only 0.18 lakh. That's 18,000. Against 18,000, you have 17.35 lakh. So again, total difference, and in less time. Third is beneficiary-led construction. Typically, let's say you have a family home which is in a somewhat rundown condition, or one might even say dilapidated. You want some money to do it up front. The central government will give you what, $1.5 lakh, and you do it up. Again, doing very well. And the fourth is the major component, affordable housing in partnership, AHP. State government provides land, central government gives a little bit of money, state government gives money. We give $1.5 lakh for every beneficiary, and some state governments give much more. Roaring. So I want to conclude by telling you, when we started the scheme, much before I came on board. I came on board only in September of 2017. Scheme started in 2015 June. We did a demand assessment. How many homes or units do you really need to produce for the Prime Minister's dream that by 2022, every Indian, no matter where he or she lives, whichever part of the country, has a home which he or she can call their own, clean, ecologically friendly, toilet, kitchen, gas cylinder, and most important, the title of the home must be in the name of the lady of the house. So it's Sustainable Development Goal 5 also gets boosted in the process. And we did a demand assessment. We were told 1 crore you'll have to make. We did a revised demand assessment. It came to 1 crore 12 lakhs. I'm very happy to inform you we've already sanctioned 1 crore 14 lakhs.
That's quite an effort.
This is saturation.
Now, the underlying philosophy of what you're trying to do seems to be, this is not a top-down kind of approach. This is much more bottom-up, demand-driven effort, decentralized in its sort of thinking. But there is another element to this. In the end, you are still thinking in terms of static ownership of property, in the sense that we are a country which is clearly churning in many ways, whether it's migration that is happening, people are moving around horizontally, but there's also people moving up the social ladder, so vertical mobility as well. So in that context, surely an important part of the thinking has got to be rental.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. You hit the nail right on the thing. You may be, or I may be, let's say, I may be, my basic place of birth and what I call home may be Jharkhand, right? But I don't live in Jharkhand. I come looking for work in India, in some other part of India, Delhi, Mumbai. So we've done 3 things. One is static ownership is what you describe this as. Sounds a good description to me, where you own a property which you got through one of these 4 verticals. One may be families, the other 3. The other is affordable rental housing scheme. What this means is, where people come looking for work for short term, there is existing housing which was not utilized, you make that available to people like migrant workers. Or there are economic entities which have production facilities in a particular place, they might want to construct something for their workers. Now this is pure renting. Would you at some stage contemplate converting that rented property into ownership? Leave that open. Second thing, do you know, because of the difficulties and the fault lines in our renting market, there were a large number of units which got constructed but never were put on rent because a landlord feared that once you put them on rent, he or she will lose control and may never get them back. Secondly, and this is more important, those people In other words, it was not based on contract, it was based on pagdi. So now, if you touch the pagdi component, there is going to be difficulty because you will get. What we did was we neatly circumvented that and produced a template. That template we have circulated to state governments, and the state governments now are implementing this scheme. It's beginning to do very well. So what is happening? So you bring in 1 crore 14 lakh units on ownership into the market. Then you supplement that by virtue of the experience you learned during the pandemic, when many of our citizens, because they were migrant workers, they became more vulnerable to the adversity of the pandemic. Now state governments are signing MOUs through 2 models to bring that about. And the third is the template on renting, to take it away from informal systems to make it a contract-based one.
Right.
So you have a home, I want to live in it, you and I sign an agreement, sign a contract, defining duration, defining terms of compensation, etc. So I think what we have succeeded in doing is to slowly but surely, post 2014, bring about a fundamental paradigmatic shift in the housing market.
Right.
I must tell you, I used to be very worried as housing minister when the real estate doesn't pick up. Today I can say with a degree of confidence, other than a few areas concentrated where there are problems of a different nature which have legacy issues, real estate is picking up, both residential real estate and commercial real estate. But affordable housing as a segment of real estate has always had potential, and I think this has added to that. Now this is what the government is doing. 1 crore 14 lakhs, Pradhan Mantri. There are other people running affordable housing schemes, housing for all on a commercial basis, and they're roaring success.
So now you've run this program for some time. I'm sure there are many learnings from this. First, we'd like to get some sense of what have we learned as far as the next generation of housing is concerned. And in that context, also remember that the nature of society is going to change in many ways. For example, work from home may fundamentally change urban landscape. So combining housing with your other hat of urban development, how would you think that things will change into the next decade or so?
3 things that I can tell you straight off. One is you have to satisfy the aspirations of the large segment of your community, especially the people who are in the economically weaker section, lower income group, medium income group. The beauty of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, to my mind, lies not only in the fact that you make a home affordable to people on an affordable basis, but you're catering to the EWS, economically weaker section, lower income group, middle income group. Okay. Second, you started with basic construction.
Right.
Then the Prime Minister got this idea, it's entirely his. He decided to name an entire year as Housing Technology Construction Year, which was I think 2020-21, if I remember correctly, in which global players were invited to demonstrate their technologies. And I think 54 such green technologies in the real estate sector were compiled, listed. Then we had a design competition and we chose 6 lighthouse projects. Lighthouse in the sense demonstrative effect.
Right.
In 6 different parts of the country to build 1,000 residential units in 1 year.
Okay.
And I would like to show you the progress of that on a real-time basis. I mean, in terms of use of technology. All of them embody different green technologies, which are state-of-the-art, cutting edge.
Right.
If there is a technology, let's say from Germany or from the United States, it is what is the latest there.
Right.
And we are hoping that these 6 lighthouse projects, 5 of them are doing extremely well. One, there were some problems on land acquisitions also catching up. We are hoping that this will have the catalytic demonstration effect.
Right.
Look, private sector has already been using green technology.
Yes.
But once we get this brick and mortar toxicity emitting technology changed.
Right.
Now in the heart of Delhi, the Parliament building is coming up. All right. You have other buildings which come up in a short duration of 11 months, 12 months, because you're using newer technologies.
But also local materials as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. A new technology doesn't mean the material has to be imported from Ohio.
Right.
Green technology means you use ecologically friendly local materials on an as-is, where-is basis.
And I believe I can watch all of this in this building.
In the Urban Observatory, to which you are invited along with your colleagues, and you can see the transformation both in mindset and in terms of the final product.
So thank you very much. That was a real eye-opener. So we are now going to go and have a look at the Urban Observatory. And yet again, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
मैंने 2.5 लाख मुझे सरकार ने मुझे सुविधा दी थी, 3 किस्तों में मिल गई थी मुझे। मैं किसी और से लेती तो बहुत महंगा पड़ता, ब्याज देनी पड़ती, 2-3 साल में चुका पाती। जब मैं कच्चे मकान में रहती थी सुखदेवपुर में, अब अपने पक्के मकान में, खुद के मकान में रह रही हूँ।
हर किसी का एक सपना होता है कि वो उस सपने को साकार करे, तो हम भी देख रहे थे फ्लैट। तो जब हम यहाँ आए तो हमने इस फ्लैट को देखा और हमें पसंद आया। तो जो मार्केटिंग वाला बंदा था उसने हमें बताया कि इसमें हमें प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना का भी बेनिफिट मिलेगा। तो हमें उससे भी थोड़ी प्रसन्नता हुई कि हम इसको चीज़ को लेने से हमें सरकार की तरफ से भी कुछ ना कुछ बेनिफिट मिलेगा। तो जब हमने ले लिया उसके 6-7 महीने बाद हमें वो बेनिफिट मिला, तो जिसकी वजह से हमारी जो इंस्टॉलमेंट लोन की जाती थी उसके अंदर हमें कुछ डिस्काउंट मिला।
So friends, I hope you got some feel of the Housing for All effort that this government is putting in, and specifically for the PM's Awas Yojana Urban, where we focused this time. In a future program, we will go and have a look more at the rural part of this program as well. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll look forward to future programs of Economic Sutra. Just to let you know, we will be taking a short break in the next month or so because of the Parliament session. This is, after all, Sansad TV. But we will be back with you in a few weeks with more episodes of Economic Sutra. See you there on Sansad TV.